Hello, BookTube. I have a bit of a Wednesday reads for you. Show you some of the things that I'm reading today. All of tonight. The weather is forecasting a sleet and ice storm again, identical to the last one. That's supposed to break tonight and happen all day tomorrow. So, oh, Bean, what are you doing? Do you want to see your fans? Whoa. Ooh. The weather forecast is predicting sleet and ice all night and all day tomorrow. So, turning to rain and then freezing overnight. So tomorrow's going to be ugly. A perfect day. The last time, 2 days ago, that we had a sleet and ice storm, I just stayed in. I just canceled the whole world and wrote and read on my bed for the whole day and the whole night. And we were just fine. Free doesn't like going out when the weather's inclement, so I just did that the whole time, and it worked just fine. I'll probably do that again, and these will be some of the books that I'm working on when I do that. The first one will take no time at all. It's a little keepsake thing. I just thought it looked cute. It's edited by Duncan Minshall, and it's called Beneath My Feet. Writers on Walking. It's just a collection of various writers. Who have we got here? Kierkegaard, Nicholas Shakespeare, Henry David Thoreau, Mary Kingsley. There's just a whole bunch of people going back to Petrarch, Hazlitt, Boswell, and I'm curious to see what gems this author pulls out of the vast corpus of meditations on writing that authors have done. Usually in the last 200 years, when an author writes an essay called On Walking or My Walks or I'm Out Walking or something like that, what they mean is smoking. They don't mean walking at all. They don't actually like walking. So I'll have to see how saturated this thing is with that. It's tiny, so I don't imagine there'll be much. But it's a cute little thing. Comes with one of those built-in bookmarks. Just a nice little anthology. I don't think I have any publicity material for this thing. So I don't know when it comes out or if it's out already, but obviously, I mean, I just realized this, but obviously this is a great candidate for if you know an avid walker who's also a reader. I just thought about that. This is the perfect little thing to get them. Then we have a big book on a serious subject. This is by Frédéric Martel. This is In the Closet in the Vatican. Power, homosexuality, hypocrisy. This is a big, huge thing. This is by a French journalist. Let me read you a little bit about it here. This comes out any day now, so I am a little bit tardy getting to this. I think this comes out on Tuesday. In the Closet of the Vatican exposes the rot at the heart of the Vatican and the Roman Catholic Church today. This brilliant piece of investigative writing is based on 4 years' authoritative research, including extensive interviews with those in power. The celibacy of priests, the condemnation of the age of contraception, and the cover-up of countless cases of sexual abuse, the resignation of Benedict XVI, misogyny among the clergy, and the dramatic fall in Europe of the number of vocation to the priesthood, plotting against Pope Francis. All these issues are clouded in mystery and secrecy, and this book reveals these secrets and penetrates this enigma. And I've heard a lot about this, but I haven't even dipped my toe into it, so I really need to get to it because it's right around the corner. So let's see here. This next one is a subject that I find fascinating for all sorts of personal reasons. Let's see what the date is on this thing. Yeah, this is also out already. I have the advanced copy and I've just ignored it. This is by Judith Grissel, and this is Never Enough: The Neuroscience and Experience of Addiction. And this is, of course, the pub sheet likens it to Leslie Jamison's The Recovery. The former addict turned PhD scholar, Judith Grissel, walks readers through the science of addiction, detailing the effects that drugs such as cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, nicotine, alcohol, marijuana, and ecstasy have on the brain, and offering unabashed retelling of her own first-hand experience with such substances. This is no cautionary tale. If there were a cure for addiction, Grissel would immediately and wholeheartedly return to using, but she utilizes her 30 years of sobriety and 20 years of addiction research to show why that is impossible, by unpacking how and why people become addicted. Intermixed throughout are vivid personal stories from the author about her own experiences with each drug, be it from a friend who was so desperate for alcohol he drank a can of hairspray, an addict who had every tooth in his head pulled out in an effort to obtain pain medication, or her own first time shooting up cocaine. By combining her two worlds, drug addiction and science, she has created a unique and compelling examination of drug addiction. And I think the whole subject is just fascinating. So I also think it's interesting that nicotine is included in here, because it usually isn't. In addiction studies, it usually isn't included. It's the worst candidate of the bunch by a wide margin, because it's everywhere, and it's universally embraced, and it's universally encouraged by every kind of pop culture there is. You can't escape it the way you can cocaine. It's entirely possible to live a life without ever thinking about being addicted to cocaine, without ever being even remotely encouraged to try it. That's entirely possible. Whereas it's not possible with nicotine. It's not possible with tobacco to do that. You are encouraged at all turns everywhere, in every part of society, to not only try this, but to become addicted to it. You are constantly, subliminally and overtly encouraged to think that this is a way to be cool. So I'm interested to see what's in here, because the author is referred to in the pub sheet as an ex-addict, but I guarantee you she still smokes. They all do. I guarantee you that is true. I don't know anything about her, but I would be amazed if that weren't true. This thing has been weaponized for 113 years in closed, legally barred off chemical research in weapons laboratories to make it unbreakable as an addiction. So the tiny handful of people who ever actually stop smoking yearn for it their whole life, every day, every hour. They yearn for it. They might physically be able to stop themselves from doing it, but they're still addicted in every sense of the word. And the number of people who succeed in stopping themselves from doing it is minuscule, vanishingly minuscule. The number of people who claim it and lie, much bigger. The number of people who do it every day but claim they're not addicted, also much bigger. But I'll be interested to see the whole of the subject. I have read a lot on addiction, trying to figure it out, trying to understand it. And this is the latest thing, and I've had the advanced copy. I just haven't got to it. This next one I don't have an advanced copy for. This next one is completely new to me, but it's a debut, and it's fiction. It's a debut novel, and I love those. And it's a family saga called The Baby of the Family by Mara Roosevelt. This is her debut novel about a family. Meet the Whitbys, an American dynasty once inundated with ungodly real estate wealth and now facing a millennium of unfamiliar obstacles. And when the paterfamilias, when the head of the family dies unexpectedly, the will leaves everything to one. Well, let me read you. There was a time when the death of a Whitby would have made national news, but when the family patriarch Roger dies, he is alone. Word of his death travels from the long-suffering family lawyer to Roger's clan of children from 4 different marriages. Brooke, an older daughter who is both overwhelmingly nostalgic and unexpectedly pregnant, leads the search for 21-year-old Nick, who all the money has gone to. The estate has been left to Nick. She leads the search for him. No one can find him. No, he's on the run from the law, it turns out, hoping to convince him to let her keep her Boston home. Shelley, the only child from the 3rd marriage, hasn't told anyone that she's dropped out of college just months before graduation and is currently working as an amanuensis for a blind architect. And when Nick, on the run from the law after a misguided act of political activism, finally appears at Shelley's New York home, worlds collide and explode in spectacular fashion. And I think this, first of all, it's lovely design. Just a lovely design. And it sounds like it could be really interesting. I just, another debut of this season, American Pop, was also about a very rich, dynastic American family. I wrote a review of that I'm very happy with. And it pleased me. The American Pop pleased me. I highly recommend it. I'm wondering if this will too. And in case you're wondering, I know, that's the elephant in the room. You're probably wondering. She is descended from Franklin Delano Roosevelt. She knows whereof she speaks, at least on a personal level, when she talks about being a member of an incredible, famous family and American plutocratic royalty. I don't think that'll play much of a part in this book. You'd have to be pretty insufferable to use that as a selling point. But nevertheless, I'm interested. I can't wait. Then this next one, subject irritates me, but the writer is great. That's always tricky. So I will of course read it. This is by Mark Sinnott, who is a fantastic nonfiction writer. Just fantastic. Cannot write a boring paragraph, which is a very high praise from Steve. And this is The Impossible Climb. Alex Honnold, El Capitan, and the Climbing Life. And in case you're wondering what it's about that. What picture on the cover there is a naturally occurring crease in a sheer mountain wall called El Capitan in Yosemite National Park. And that figure you see there, that figure of a man in a red t-shirt, is climbing El Capitan without, as you can see, without any support material. He doesn't have hammer and pitons. He doesn't have a guide rope. He doesn't have a net. Doesn't have a helmet. Doesn't have shoes on. This is called free climbing. And Alex Honnold is the greatest free climber in the world. I find the subject a little bit annoying. I think that in order to free climb something that's 1,000 feet tall, 3,000 feet tall, you need to be suicidal. On some very measurable personal level, you need to have suicidal tendencies, which ought to prevent you. It ought to be illegal to do this, is what I'm saying. Because if he slips, he dies. There's nothing there. There's nothing at the bottom. There's nothing to help him. If he slips, he dies. If anyone slips, he doesn't touch Alex Honnold, but anybody. If you free climb something 1,000 feet high, you have to be courting your own death. And that annoys me. Alex Honnold also personally annoys me. He is the subject of a cult of hero worship. That I'm sure that Mark Sinnott is part of that, even though he is a clear-eyed journalist. I'm sure that he cuts Alex Honnold all kinds of slack in this book. I've never read a profile of Honnold that didn't do that. I don't think that's particularly right or healthy. But one way or another, the subject, of course, is fascinating. Honnold succeeded. He succeeded in free climbing El Capitan. I think it took him only 3 or 4 hours to do. Because in a case like this, you either succeed right away or you die. And I think that's just incredible. I think it was the New York Times that referred to it as one of the greatest athletic feats in any field at any time ever. And they're entirely right. He climbed an almost sheer rock wall with his fingers and toes. And of course, the whole subject makes me think of the much maligned Star Trek V. I don't know why fans don't like that movie. I love it. Of course, Star Trek V opens with Jim Kirk free climbing El Capitan, just for the fun of it. And he's interrupted by Mr. Spock on jet boots, telling him that the record for free climbing El Capitan is in no danger of being broken. Is it Alex Honnold's record? Is that what Spock is talking about, even 300 years later? And Kirk tells him he's not trying to set a record. Just doing it, including, for personal reasons, including the most important reason for climbing a mountain. Because it's there. And then at the opening of that movie, of course, distracted by Mr. Spock, Kirk slips and falls. What could happen to Alex Honnold at any time, the way this kid will certainly die, happens to Kirk. He slips and falls. Nothing to save him. No ropes or anything except Spock and his jet boots. And Spock saves him just before he pops like a grape on the ground and says, perhaps, because it is there, is not sufficient reason for climbing a mountain. And Kirk says, I'm hardly in a position to disagree. That's a wonderful movie. I don't know why people don't like Star Trek V. It's got some great stuff in it. But anyway, I don't know if Star Trek V is mentioned in this book. Probably not. This is probably a hymnal in the High Church of Alex Honnold. So it probably won't mention anything as frivolous as the fact that Jim Kirk also tried to free climb El Capitan. But I read the excerpt in National Geographic. It was fantastic, gripping from start to finish. Can't wait to read the rest of this, especially since I get the impression from The Climbing Life that Sinnott will probably write a lot about other free climbers, the history of free climbing, which is fantastic. This shouldn't all be about Alex Honnold. It should be about lots of other people too, forebearers. And if that's true, there's no better person to write it. So I'm on board. And then the last thing, perfect example of To a Man with a Hammer, Everything Looks Like a Nail. This is by Paul Moreland, and it is called The Human Tide, How Population Shaped the Modern World. This also, I think, is right around the corner. This is March 5th. There are about 150 books coming out on March 5th. No exaggeration. About 150 general interest titles that I actually want to write and review, all coming out on the 5th. And this is one of them. And the author says that basically everything that is important that has ever happened in human history has happened because of population movements. And you got to, I mean, he's probably, I don't know anything about him. Who is he here? He's an associate research fellow at Birkbeck, University of London, and an authority on demography. Okay, I had to figure he's an authority on demography because you'd have to be in order to think something as silly as that. And you have to give a wonk a little leeway. They are, of course, going to overreach for their specialty. But given that, factoring that in, this could be fascinating. I can't wait to see what patterns this author finds, and also what he projects to the future. I just recently read and wrote a review for Empty Planet, a book by two authors about how they project that human population levels are going to level off somewhere in the upcoming 3 or 4 decades, and then begin dropping precipitously. And according to those two authors, they're never going to recover. Once they start dropping, that's it. I wonder what this author will say on the subject, but this is more of a historical look. How did population shifts affect the American Revolution, the Industrial Revolution, the wars of Napoleon, anything like the election of Trump? We'll see. We'll see what he does with it. I can't wait to find out. This is one of the things I love about my job, is that a specialist comes along, writes from passion, and whether explicitly or not, wants to convince me of something. Okay, well, I am an extremely experienced reader who has a genuinely open mind. I am, in other words, the perfect place for you to try it. I don't know anything about your subject matter, but I have an audience of, all told, about 150,000 readers. I'm an indefatigable reader who I don't piddle around with one book a week, so I will get to your book. And I've read and I remember a lot of other books on your subject, so I am perfectly situated to pack on books like this and just dig right into them. I love it. If the author can convince me that human demography is behind key human events in a much greater extent than I thought before I read this book, more power to him. So that's our Wednesday reads for today. We have The Human Tide. We have The Impossible Climb. Not just Alex Honnold and his incredible free climb of El Capitan, using his fingers and toes. You look at this thing. Look at a picture of El Capitan. You would think that a lizard couldn't climb up it. But it's not just about that. It sounds like it will also be about the free climbing world and maybe a little of the free climbing history. That'd be great. That'd be fantastic. Then The Baby of the Family by Maura Roosevelt, a debut novel about an American aristocratic family whose linchpin patriarch has just left. He's just disappeared. And now we have to figure out what the next generation is going to do. The next generation suddenly has to figure out how to sort itself out. Sounds like it could be really fun, especially if the characters are delineated well. Then we have Never Enough, a first-hand book about the science and personal aspects of addiction by someone who is not only a scientist, but also was a longtime addict. Could be utterly fascinating. Then homosexuality. This is In the Closet of the Vatican. Homosexuality at the Vatican. I'm assuming in relatively modern times, the last 20 years. I don't think the author has the space to go back any further than that. This is going to be all about that, and it's by a muckraking reporter. This book is breaking all over the world. Lots and lots of conversations will be happening about it, and it's a direct interest to me. And then this little thing. What's it called? Beneath My Feet. A little anthology of writers out walking. We'll see. It's a lot of writers writing, at not very great length about walking. So one of the charms for me will be re-encountering some of these authors that I haven't read in years, and also encountering, I'm sure that in this anthology I will encounter some writers that I've never encountered before, and that's a lot of fun. That'll be a lot of fun. That'll be first. I'll just do that, and it'll take no time at all to read, and then I'll move on. I think I'll go to the Vatican next. I know somebody who works at the Vatican Library who's worked there forever, and who has told me horror stories about essentially the gay mafia that runs the place, and I can't wait to see what kind of research this guy has done. So that's it. That is a very bookish email. Very sorry for your TBRs. Once again, I should start every bookish video with apologies to your TBRs, because I get a lot of that in the comments and in emails that I'm bad for your TBRs. Sorry. I know the rest of you have to pay for these things. But that's going to wrap it up. That is my Wednesday reads. If tomorrow really is sleety and snowy, sleety and icy and rainy, you may get a lot of videos from me. I won't have much else to do but read and write. We'll see. Either way, I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.